What is up? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Sacramento hardcore band VII. The band's new album, VII, will be released on July 7th via Minus Head Records. So, almost 5 years on since Muerte, VII have returned with album number 7. We are also coming up on almost 30 years since this band formed. What?
I mean, yeah. They've been around.
Yeah. Formed in 95. That's crazy, man. It's weird when you say that, like, formed in 95, almost 30 years. And in some ways, I kind of feel like VII are maybe a little bit neglected in some ways. Like, they have this like 30-year career, 7 albums. They get referenced constantly.
Well, this is where I would not necessarily kick back, but I would say in the last 2 years their influence has been heavily felt.
Absolutely. But I kind of feel like they should be way bigger than they actually are. Like, it's not like they've released any bad albums, you know what I mean? Like, they have a consistency in the releases for sure. But as you said, I feel like the sound and style of this one is kind of huge right now in the scene, you know. So it might be the perfect time to drop a VII album, to be honest.
In a lot of respects, I think they were preempting it as well when they came back with Carpe Diem. I think that was when I first started picking up that there was very similar to the way you first listened to it, and I'm going to mention Deftones loads, so you might as well strap yourself in. To me, the two bands, whilst being completely different, are almost inseparable in terms of their evolution and their sound. Very hard.
The first time I saw VII was with the Deftones.
There you go, Dave. It's like, there you go. But the bands themselves have never been a band that, like, Deftones were new metal, and they were never really new metal, right? That first album has new metal tropes, but there was always something about them that made them more kind of ethereal and different.
Yeah.
VII were a hardcore band, but they were never really a hardcore band. And I think Carpe Diem is to VII what White Pony is to the Deftones, and that was the first time that they were experimenting with different kind of tones and sounds and heavier elements that just kind of made them sound different from everything else that was going around. And I think they've consistently maintained that. When we listen to like deathcore, because occasionally we have to listen to deathcore, and when we listen to that now, all the atmosphere that bands are putting in with the synth work in the background is VII. VII were doing it over a decade before you guys even thought about doing it. And it's there, but specifically I think in the last 2 years in particular, coming back to doing more intensive reviewing, I feel their influence very prominently over a wealth of different bands in a couple of different genres, where there's just that element that you can connect to that sound. So much so that when we were in a band, and this is for no one's interest apart from VII, we used to name, the way we would remember riffs or songs before we had titles is we would name them after things. Like, this riff is so heavy it sounds like a man carrying a giant bag on his shoulders up a flight of stairs. So it was up a flight of stairs, down a flight of stairs. But we had a whole song which was called the VII song, because the guitar riffing in it, and even the tone and tempo and all the rest, evoked the sound of VII without trying to emulate it. So I think they exist in a weird bubble of their own, whilst being easy to compare other bands to them, is very difficult to compare VII to anyone. I also think that's maybe why they're not bigger than they are, because they're only 7 albums in. They don't rush things, and they're quite happy to take 5 years in between albums, and that might work for Tool. But for other genres, it's a harder slog. But if you're a VII fan, from any point that you get into VII, you're pretty much ride or die till death. You know what I mean? Like you don't get off that.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as Willhaven clicks for you, you're in with the bricks. So.
True. So the upcoming album was recorded at Puss Cavern Studios in Sacramento. Wow. Engineered by Joe Johnson, who's worked with the Deftones,
Deftones mentioned again.
Gavin Dance and Hoods. Produced and mixed by Joe Johnson and Willhaven, and mastered by Alan Douches at West Side Music. The record also features guest vocals and additional lyrics on Evolution of a Man by Reykjavik Osborne Big Feather from Death Valley High, and the final note of La Ultima Nota was played by Willhaven fans from around the world. Speaking about the upcoming album, Jeff Irwin says, we began working on the songs right before COVID hit, so we spent those years just messing around with ideas, riffs, arrangements. The creation of this record was a bit of a process, but it gave us an escape from everything else going on in the world. To this day, I am still trying to wrap my head around this record. It's heavy, chaotic, mellow, beautiful, and dark. It's more of an art piece than your normal standard songs, and that's exactly what we wanted. I love hearing it in its entirety, and I'm looking forward to performing all of the songs. It's even more of a journey when you hear it live. They've also released a couple of singles, but something the band said about the 5 of Fire track, it kind of intrigued me. So Jeff had said that 5 of Fire is, to me, the blueprint for this record. It's heavy, chaotic, with different moods and tempo changes. We wanted to challenge ourselves by writing live in real time, and this song was the one to set that off. I love how it came out, and I find myself going back and listening to it over and over again. I still find something new every time I listen. So that was quite interesting to hear. Like, they are this far into their career and they're still approaching, different ways of writing, and clearly a band that still get a lot from this. They're not just putting out an album for the sake of it, and you can hear that with each release. They all have something a little different, where they've pushed a certain element further than before, or tried incorporating new elements, like the kind of brooding synths that they kind of brought in and stuff as well. What do we think? Number 7 from Willhaven. What do you think? You go for it. What do you think of this new one?
I think this might be the heaviest thing they've ever released.
It could be. Could quite be, yeah.
There's the opening riff on For All Future Time about folded me like an accordion. Like, honestly, I was at that like they talk about pulling stank face.
Yeah.
When we hear something, you're just like, oh, like that. My face just kept going. I look like a fucking bad Snapchat filter, which had just morphed timeline my face backwards. I will put cards on table here. I am like a mark for Willhaven. I have been for the longest fucking time. And I get very excited. And we've been talking about this now for over a year, I think, was when they teased they were starting to do something. And it's been a countdown. It's been a painstaking countdown to get my hands on this album.
Yeah.
And it lives up to every second of the wait. They still have all these tricks that they pull out, which just kind of floor me. The album opens with Luna, which is a very, very, very intensely building up song, which starts not serene, but starts in a place where you're like, all right, this is the level of heavy I'm going to get before it increases to essentially blast beats by the end. It's fucking nuts. And 5 of Fire kick in. I see what they're saying there. I do get there's prominent use of the synths. There is that chaotic element that they have, but there's grooves right through that track, which continues. I mean, all those elements are there in various different shades. We experiment a bit more when we get into the back half of the album. But I knew I was falling hard for this, like I say, when track 3 For All Future Time kicked in. And that big old fat as fuck bendy riff kicked in at the start. And I was just like, this is what, not to liken them to deathcore bands, but deathcore bands would fucking sell their soul to have a riff as fucking heavy as that's not fucking quantized and time aligned and fucking put through 75 EQ pedals and gated and compressed and then put on a fucking MP3. Like, this just makes these sound so fucking heavy, and it never at any point feels like they are going out their way to be heavy. They just are heavy. It's a great track, but what was one of the big standout things to me on that is the prominence of the synths. Like, underpinning with this kind of malicious melody that at times does move from like a kind of minor to a major, like in terms of lightening things up, but it never stays there long. Like, it's almost like if Will Haven open a room and there's a light on, they switch it off before they walk in, and then close the door. It's just like that. It's kind of seeped in that, and at that point, track 3, I was like, fucking hell, here we go. Right, we're going to take a wee seat for a while. Evolution of a Man kicks in, which I think is one of those really exciting experiments that Will Haven will want to do on an album. It definitely is playing much more with texture. It definitely evokes a little bit more of a Deftones feel in terms of the synth work on it.
Yeah.
But it's really, really cool. It's a total mood piece, and it's the longest track up into, is it second longest track up into that point, which isn't a single. You know what I mean? It's just like it changes the texture of the album completely. And then the band have been really smart about this, because Paloma's Blessing, which is the next track, which has once again, like, no one bends, like, Bend It Like Beckham does not bend it like Will Haven. Has like some of the most bendy riffs I've ever. Burr, like, you're like, how far does this burr? It's like fucking like dropping something down a well and not hearing the splash. That's how much bend there is on it. Paloma's Blessing was a track they had released as well, so I'd heard that before. So it kind of felt like, once again, after Evolution of Man, we've had that chapter of the band, and then we're moving into the second chapter of the band. So it's fucking great. Grady is a vocalist who just over time, I think, has matured like a fine wine. He's not nearly as, like, see, you listen to early Will Haven, like the album WVHN, for example. There's all like 2 seconds away from voice breaking, just screaming on that. Like, it is now so much more measured. He's so in control of his tone, and it's just as equally as ferocious, but he's just matured into it, like, just like with ease. And Paloma's Blessing is just full of those big, elongated phrasing of Grady just leaning it, those bends with the vocals. It's fucking amazing. And then you go into Wings of Mariposa, also a single. It's another track which, when I heard it, I got giddy as fuck. So, like, it was difficult not to get giddy, like, when they released the kind of advanced singles. It came out with Five of Fire, and only it's like a double single release, because they just gave us 2. Why not? And like Attack Snare, faster pace, like before, like the halftime punches to the face, just huge sounding. Like, this sounds fucking massive, and it's a combination of smart elements, really heavy guitars, but the synth work cannot be underestimated on this album at all. It's just fucking chef's kiss all the way through it. It's just like it's a tone. It's a filler of space, and it's an atmosphere that lifts maliciously everything up. So I would like, once again, like, we're coming at Paloma's Blessing, we're into Wings of Mariposa. It's a track that I know, and then we go into Diabloto 1 and 2. Oh, like, fucking, like, stick a fork in me, I'm done. I fucking love this. Like, so this is like, written for Duncan by friends of Duncan.
I must admit, it was one of my favourite parts of the album as well,
because it sounds so different from everything else. It lands just after the halfway mark, adds something that the album, you didn't think the album needed. But it just it makes it like 7 albums and 30 years into their career, and curveballs, like, still just doing things at their own pace, different. I loved it. It's like the opening track starts off like heavy aggressive, like, so Diablito starts off with just this like snarl, the kind of classic Will Haven snarly pitch. But towards the end of the track, it starts to break out into these almost film score levels of kind of like composition and melody.
Yep.
And then it flows like really, really comfortably into Diablito 2, which is like this it's basically an interlude track that continues those kind of tones, those drones right through. Now that could have been one track. I, for one, am over the moon that it's not. The same way that I'm over the moon that like Suicide Note Parts 1 and 2 are two separate tracks. Diablito 2 is designed for a unique purpose, and that purpose is to give you the respite you need for essentially the back three tracks, which are some of the most ambitious and just generally incredible Will Haven songs I've ever heard in my entire life. No Stars to Guide Me it's fucking all soul and heart and rage, and it's just so fucking good. And that track leans into Feeding the Soil, which once again is just Will Haven pushing the boat out. Like, just like if this is the cage that the band's kind of set up for themselves, they're now pushing against the cage. It's like No Stars to Guide Me is beautiful. Feeding the Soil is crushing. Like, it's so fucking heavy and so good, man. So good. Like, the band just continuing to do what they do. And then there's like those elements of the Deftones and Feeding the Soil, especially on the guitar work before it gets all fucking heavy, where you're listening, you're like, you just expect Chino, can you? And you're like, no, Chino, you're not on this song. And then La Ultima Nota, the Ultimate Night, maybe? I don't know. I'm just guessing. Sims Latin. Is like a haunting fucking song. Like, stuck with me, like that way where you've like, if you've ever watched the movie Requiem for a Dream and it finishes and you're just kind of sitting there going it kind of stuck with me on that one. It's an incredibly moody, I've used this word twice tonight already, ethereal. Once again feels a bit film scorey, dark, finale to the album. Synths take prominence, guitar work is sparse and kind of picked, and it builds and builds, and then ends on what I didn't realise was a kind of viral moment with the notes from lots of different fans from out the world. Production is fucking huge. They've never had an issue with that. I've loved, like, even when they were at the most raw back on Choke, like right through it now, I've always thought the production always suited the sound of the band now. I spent the last 2 years comparing bands to Will Haven. Like, going out my way to say, oh, it's very Will Haven. Oh, the Will Haven influence is like working its way through. You know what I mean? I've spent all that time doing that. Not thinking what Will Haven in 2023 might sound like, and now having that album, it's the next level up again. I mean, I don't think there'll be surprises when we come to the score, and I fucking love this. Absolutely love this. Yes, mark for the band. I think this is up there in the catalogue. I think this is up there. Like, I think this is dangerously teetering towards the top. I just think this sounds like a band that I don't even know if they still know how important they are. But they continually just raise that bar every album, and they make it sound like it was always organically going to go up on the next release. Moody, dark, oppressive, heavy as fuck. Like, heavy as fuck. This is LLNN heavy as fuck. Another band that I compare to Will Haven. It's amazing. I think it's fucking awesome. It's great to have them back. Like you said, Dave, I think the climate's changed a little bit for heavier music. It kind of feels like this is their time. And if you've never heard Will Haven before and you like your music heavy, dark, and punishing, now is the time to welcome your new favourite band in your collection. What about you? I don't, the thing is, listening to this, there was just like, it's just a plethora of moments where I'm like that. I can read Dave's face. You know, like, fucking
Jesus.
15 miles away from my house. I can read his face because it's just moments where you just go, oh, on that. It's fucking incredible. What
Dude,
did you make it?
I was trying to keep a straight face while you were talking about the album. I didn't want to show my excitement too much and give it away because I'm just like,
So good, man.
well, like if you've listened to our reviews before, I tend to maybe go back and check out like the previous album of a band before I go in on the new one. And this one, what happened was I was like, you know what, I've not listened to in a while. El Diablo. I'm gonna have a wee listen to
You went back, gonna go back in
So
time.
I was like stuck on El Diablo. I was like, I've not heard this in ages. And before I knew it, I went through every single Will Haven album.
They don't have a bad album, Dave.
They don't.
They don't have a bad album, Dave.
And I was like, as I started to go through them, I was like, I wonder if my favourite Will Haven album is still the same, or will it have changed?
What was your favourite? Just out of curiosity.
Well, my introduction to Will Haven was actually WHVN. That was the first,
which is the album you gave me a loan of, which is how I found out about Will Haven.
Yeah, so that was the first one. So I do have a bit of a soft spot for the album. There's some tracks on that just fucking do things to me. I love that album. It's fantastic. And then Carpe Diem came out, and I was like, oh man, Jesus Christ, like fuck, this is fucking amazing. This is like the greatest thing they've done. And I've enjoyed everything else they've done. Muerte though, is up there as well. That's my top three. Like those three albums for me are like fucking.
And like if you were charting them, those three albums are distinct changes in the sound of the band. Those are, if you were doing measuring points of evolution in sound, those are the three evolutions of their sound.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of glad that I did do a kind of run through of their back catalogue, because I felt like there were so many references or nods on this album to certain albums of their past. It's kind of one of those releases that I felt like kind of encapsulated a lot of their career so far. And it was cool to hear, firstly, in a kind of nostalgic way. Like, I've been listening to Will Haven for just over 20 years. So there was a kind of comfort in hearing them attack something on this release like they did on El Diablo or WHVN. And that intensity is like there from Luna, from the first track. And when it kicked in fully, and the riffs are just thick, like really thick, really metallic. Actually, the guitar tone, when I heard it, I was like, it has more clarity to it than something like Voir Dire or the Hierophant. Rather than something like Open the Mind, for example, which was a bit more kind of like a bit more coated in atmosphere. The grooves on this are so heavy, but as you said, like that first track, they throw in a bit of speed with like this blast section at the end. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it kind of like, when I heard that track, I was like, oh fuck, like this album's just going to be so intense. I can tell already, like from track one, this is just going to be, and it's crushingly heavy. Like, it's like 11 tracks of some of the most disgusting riffs and like absolutely guttural vocals. But what I love about Will Haven is as intense as it is, you still have that Will Haven menacing atmosphere that just sits in the background, and they cleverly push that or pull it, depending on the tone that the track needs. And the second track that kicks in, which is Five of Fire, certainly gives you that, like the way it shifts between the moods and the force. I agree with you though, like for all future time, fuck.
The opening, honestly, I almost shat myself. It was that heavy, and like you cannot not pull a face that just is just like someone doing a bad impression of Robert De Niro. Like, like you can't not.
Yeah, that will tear you a new asshole. That is filth, absolute filth. It's groove laden, but it's got like this kind of like dissonance to it, like a filthy Candiria dissonance to it. And you just can't help but like be totally sucked in by that groove. My head was going. The bass is almost as heavy as the guitars as well. Like
the bass is a tow cable that pulls a tank.
It rattles.
It can't not be it.
I was listening to the bass and it rattles alongside the riffs, and it just makes it even more intense. It's also got some really great moments of like clean guitar work as well, which gives this really nice ebb and flow to the track. So even though it's crushingly heavy, I didn't ever feel like it was too overwhelming for me. There was like enough of like a kind of breathable moment in there that was like kind of that was fine. You know, it didn't feel too much. Um, I yeah, I agree with you on the synth work. I think it's fantastic on this release.
Yeah.
Evolution of Man is just incredible. It's got this really almost like apocalyptic sound in the synth work. And I felt like they almost pulled the guitars back just a little bit on that track and let the synths kind of take more of the spotlight. There's also that little drop of clean vocals, which usually come in the form of a guest, like they did on the last time. I think it was Mike from Yob. I think it was on the last one. And this one we've got Reykjavik Osborne Big Feather doing a bit of
What
cleans.
a name.
Amazing. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really clever way just to kind of break things up, and it keeps you kind of engaged in the track as well. Loved Wings of Mariposa. I think it has a very early, like kind of 2000s Will Haven vibe, and especially in some of the kind of more up tempo rhythms on the track. But they merge it so well with that kind of newer, like slower Will Haven sound, which is much denser and just it feels like it's just clinging to you afterwards after the track is finished. I wasn't sure if Diablito and Diablito 2 were a reference to El Diablo. I was like, that's kind of similar. Maybe that's a reference to something back then. I'm not entirely sure. But I think it's an incredible like double hit on the album. It was one of my favorite parts of the release. The synths are just phenomenal. I agree. I was going to say the same thing, like a movie score on Diablito. And I was so focused on the chords and the kind of transitions of those tracks and the riffs on Diablito, but there's something also just completely captivating about the synths and the kind of grandeur of them on that track. Diablito 2 is like all synths and it's like just fucking unreal. I only wish that was longer. It's like over a minute long. I was like, I could listen to this for another 3-4 minutes easy. But it transitioned so well. I agree with you. I think I really like the fact they kept them as two separate tracks. And the transitions are great on this album. They often end tracks with something quiet or kind of spacey, and those end parts work really well in kind of transitioning from track to track throughout the album, and it just makes it kind of flow really naturally on the album. The other thing that I noticed was this isn't a long album for Will Haven either. Like,
No.
You're looking at one of their shortest releases. It's just under 33 minutes. So as much as this is a style that can be quite like drawn out and kind of slow burn, Will Haven have given us an album of 11 songs that don't overstay their welcome at all. Most of the kind of lengthier tracks are towards the end of the album, with No Stars to Guide Me and Feeding the Soil being over like 4.5 minutes. And those tracks do feel a little more kind of drawn out, slower in sections. They lean, in certain parts, they lean further into that doomier side. And you've got the kind of that backdrop of like kind of brooding synth work as well, making it sound really uneasy. I really liked the fact that they added a little bit piano to Feeding the Soil, which kind of gives it this really eerie vibe, and it made it stand out even more for me. And then last track is about 90% synths, to be honest, but it has this really like chunky, heavy middle section where the guitars come in and really kind of let rip. But the one thing that caught my ear was Grady lets out a scream in the middle of that section, which is cool as fuck. And if you listen to it, it kind of changes in pitch with the synth chords. And it's kind of like, and this guy sounds nothing like Will Haven, but it reminded me of Devin Townsend a little bit, the way that his vocals kind of
like tonal screams.
Yes, absolutely. I thought it was really clever, really caught my ear. And I thought, like in general, I think his vocals are amazing throughout the album. I've always loved his tone. And as you said, I think over the years he's perfected it to a point where it's kind of like he's got this faultless delivery now of grit and anguish that I think he's actually really distinguishable as a vocalist. He's got
in that genre, 100%.
Yeah, he's got a very unique character about his voice, which just sounds insane on this album. This is fucking awesome. I again probably a mark for this. This is like right up my street. But like, I think you've got to take your hat off to a band like Wellhaven, who never really dropped the ball. They have a career spanning back almost 3 decades. There's not a bad album in their catalogue. And I think VII is an excellent addition to this collection of theirs. It gives you everything you want from Wellhaven and a bit more. And I think it'll appeal to fans of different stages of their career. There's a little bit of everything in there that you'll go, oh, that's a little bit like that album. But then there's also this other level to it where it's like, this is 2023 Wellhaven as well. Yeah, loved it. Thought it was a fantastic release. Not disappointed in the slightest. The only thing that kills me is it's another album that I'm going to have to try and slot in to an end of year
this
list.
is the thing. This is the ongoing joke now, is we're getting to the point where it's just absurd. Are you going to ask me? Yeah.
I mean, we'll do it anyway. We'll just ask the question because we do it on every review, but it seems kind of pointless. But what are you going to score the 7th album from Wellhaven?
5. There's like not one element here that I think can be perfect. I think they are, at this point in their career, the perfect band for what they're doing. I can't think of anything at all. It's that phrase that sometimes annoys me, where people are like that. It's quality, not quantity. There's never been a band that's more personified that than Wellhaven.
Yeah,
like they might not release albums every second year, but when they release an album, it's gonna make that end of year list, and this one is gonna make that end of year list. So
it is
5.
Yep, I'm gonna 100% agree with that statement. It's a 5 from me as well. I don't see where you could pick a fault in this, to be honest. I tried. I listened to it, and I know I'm a big fan of Wellhaven, and it would be really easy for me to just be like 5, take the 5. But actually, I mean, I listened to this in detail multiple times, and I just think it's awesome. It's an absolutely incredible release, and it's kind of insane that they're still kind of getting better at this stage in their career.
It's just the more they experiment with atmosphere in the background, the better they get, which once again is, I'm going to mention them at the end because I said I'd mention them loads. Deftones were exactly the same. The more Deftones leaned into the atmosphere and the work on the synths, it elevated everyone else's, not playing, but the resonance that everyone else was doing, and Wellhaven are no exception to that. It would be great. They are on my bucket list. I have never seen Wellhaven live. I, unlike you, didn't go and see them with the Deftones, so they.
Well, I mean, it's been like over. Yeah, probably about 20 years since I've seen Wellhaven, so
I would love to see them live, and I would love to see this stuff live.
Yeah,
I'm more excited than they are to hear it live. So.
Yeah, well, I really haven't heard Wellhaven live with all the synth stuff. It was like before that I saw them, so yeah, I'd definitely like to see that. Wellhaven 7, it's out on the 7th of July, and it's out on
7/7. There you go. Yeah.
7/7 on Minus Head Records. Links below to the band, to the Bandcamp pre-order. Check it out, have a listen.
Oh, it's all 7s. 2023. 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 3 is 7. 7, 7, 7. Jesus Christ. 5.5. Let's give them extra.
Let us know what you think. Have a listen. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.